Hey, what's up? This is Acronym here, and I mean that in a very literal sense because we are joined by Errolson Hugh of Acronym fame, of course, principal designer and co-founder. Errolson, safe to say we're very big fans of your work here on the channel, so thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Everyone's been working from home a lot recently, myself included, so considering Acronym as a brand that's best known for outerwear, what does the current Hugh uniform look like?
It actually hasn't changed. It's still the P30A and the LA6B, whatever black sleeveless T-shirt I happen to be rocking at the moment. And I mean, Acronym stuff's extremely comfortable, so it works indoors as well as outdoors. No Gore-Tex, but other than that, everything's yeah.
I can agree with that for sure. So last week was Acronym Week, is how you described it, combining both the second drop of the season and the launch of the RMT01 as well, so pretty significant. But as always, the clothing drop was a mix of reiterations, re-releases, and new stuff as well. So what kind of informs your choices of what things do you pick out from the back catalogue to kind of re-look at for a new season?
That's actually quite an involved process. It entails a lot of things, and different pieces get reintroduced at different times for different reasons. So there's no like one. It's not like we have a calendar. It's like, okay, 5 years into it, we do a drop at 36 months old or whatever. There's no formula. It's much more a question of like either we have an idea for a new version where we think, oh, this fabric would be great for this style, or we have something like I've always wanted to like fix this one thing that we didn't get right before, or it's just like it's been missed and it feels like the right time to bring it back. It's a very case by case kind of thing with us as always. And so because everything that we do make, it also means we can't make something else because the production is still quite limited. It's not like we have unlimited slots where we can just make 6 versions of a jacket if we feel like it. We do have to like before a lot of like bigger collections work where the market decides. You'll have a collection with like 300 SKUs, and then from the sales of that, from wholesaling and then from retail, it will crystallize out in the market what's actually the one. And with us, we don't really have that luxury, unfortunately. So we have to figure that out ourselves beforehand, for better or for worse. Sometimes we get it right, sometimes we don't. So it's always a challenge, actually.
On that topic, actually, of getting things right or getting things wrong, that's something that you've talked about before. Like when you release clothing, you're often kind of surprised by the things that are the most popular. So is there anything recently that's been more popular than you expected, or anything that you think recently has been kind of underappreciated or overlooked in some way?
Things that went a lot faster than we expected were the J89, which was the Alpha Direct sort of Noragi kind of
back there.
Layer. There you go. And the P36, which is an experimental sort of pleated pant that we did. Both of those were thought, I mean, the 89 a little bit less, but P36 in general, we were like, we're just going to do this because we think it's cool. We're not necessarily expecting to sell a lot of them, and they're almost all gone. So that was a surprise. Conversely, the P37 is one I think will play out over the long term because it's a fantastic pant, and it's extremely versatile. I guess maybe it doesn't photograph as spectacularly as some of the other stuff, but it's one of the ones I was surprised, like, oh, I thought that would do better. But it also doesn't mean, how do I put it? Because the way we design things, it's atemporal. Like it's not for a specific season, as in both in terms of release, like fall, winter, 2021. It's also not specifically for fall, winter. You could also use it in other climates and conditions. And sometimes it just takes time for people to understand it. Also, primarily because we're a small company and don't really have a lot of communication. The product speaks for itself. And so word of mouth has to have time to occur, and it percolates through. And people always figure it out in the end, though. So.
This season, we saw tension zip come up on quite a few new items, and you've spoken before again about how that kind of solved the unique problem of the zip managing to open up the pocket kind of properly. What was the inspiration behind that design, and is there anything like any current problems that you're currently trying to work through or think about solutions for?
Yeah, I mean, there's always problems. There's always details that need, whether we're trying to improve or things we'd like to achieve. Like too many to even name or remember. That's an ongoing research thing for us. The tension zip is interesting. I've also spoken to a lot of other designers over the years. Probably in the late 90s is when we first tried to do that. So it's not, that's not something where we're like, oh, we're going to solve this in the next 6 months and do it. It's to have a pocket that with the zipper construction itself causes the circumference of the access to change as you open it dynamically is, I mean, people have been trying to do it for decades. And two of the people in the studio here went on kind of a exploration where they, for a number of months, would just iterate different ways to process zippers. And one of those resulted in the tension zip. And then even in actually a number of different iteration or variations in how to achieve that. Yeah. So, and even there, we also, we put it on the J1E first to understand the manufacturing process of it, to see if we could scale it and to see how it held up over time and in the field. We really try to avoid releasing things that we're not 100% sure will work.
Do you think those different iterations, is it like the tension zip won out against all those different versions, or do you think they all have some kind of reason that you'd use them and maybe the other versions are going to show up later?
Yeah, no, there's already two versions are out. The J84 has another style of it where it's called the teardrop iteration, but it uses the same principle where the tension of the zipper type itself is used to articulate the pocket opening. And yeah, it's just a different angle and a different sort of installation of it.
Okay, so yeah, like tension zip is kind of a group of things as much as a single specific thing.
Yep.
Cool, got you.
And even some of the ones that like look the same, if you look, flip them inside out and look in the inside, you'll see that they're actually not going forwards. I'm not sure if those are out yet, but yeah, there's a few more on the way as well. So.
Cool. Yeah, we'll keep a lookout then for sure. So the other half, I suppose, of Acronym Week is the RMT01. So first thing I want to ask about the packaging itself, including that air pack that was shown off kind of even before the actual laptop. So obviously you consider the packaging to be a pretty important part of that overall product. How did you go about designing that package to be so important as part of the whole and with sustainability and that sort of thing in mind?
Yeah, acronym and packaging is sort of it's kind of a reverse logic. I mean, people know that now with the packaging, the clothing as well. We'd like to have as little packaging as we possibly can. So we don't really see acronym although the prices are in a similar category to luxury products, we're not trying to use, things that are purposely scarce or, typical luxury materials. We just try to build the best possible thing we can. And oftentimes we end up at very high prices. But to sort of underscore that, we don't spend time, making sure the hang tag is exactly the right, foil embossed gold. I mean, the one year that Gucci copied the J5A, we actually ordered one just to see what they did. And the thing we were most impressed about was the packaging, right? The box inside the box, and then the fabric like slip cover, then the plastic bag, then the hanger, the gold tags and everything, the little metal fasteners. That's where most of the work went, and obviously quite a lot of the production prices is in the packaging. With Acronym, it's kind of the opposite. Like even the Ziploc bags we use are like they're off the shelf. They're not even custom made. There's no printed logo. There's nothing. And so for the laptop, we also wanted to take the same approach where it's like, obviously the packaging is important because it guarantees your product arrives unscathed. We set about, the first brief was actually to reduce it as much as possible, to make it as minimal as we could. So we looked at all the different options that were available, and Asus Republic of Gamers had like an incredible array of possibilities, and they're very, very good at packaging. And they were kind of confused when we were like, what's the most basic, simple, like non-custom thing you have? And they're like, oh, it's this thing internally, it's called the pizza box. They're like, we'll use that. And they're like, what about iridescent, metallic refractive inks? They're like, no, we'll just no color, raw cardboard and black ink. And then, and then the padding was the same thing. The most minimal thing we could come up with to actually make sure that our laptops arrives was the air pack. Also turned out to be one of the most recyclable methods of packaging that were available. We thought, okay, well, if this is it, let's at least make this part of the packaging as reusable as possible and make it look cool, so that people won't just discard it and throw away. And that was that. It was a very simple, very direct response to the need to ship.
That's cool. That makes sense. So the design is based on a gaming laptop, but the result aesthetically is very different to a gaming device. So on that basis, what drew you to using the G14 as a template, and what was that process like of reimagining a gaming device into something else?
Republic of Gamers came to us with that model in mind, and they had specifically chosen it because it is able to occupy the sweet spot between gaming functionality and let's call it creator functionality. It has a kick-ass processor, kick-ass graphics card, and it's an unusual combination. You see a lot of the comments, the gamers are like, why do you have this processor with just GPU? Like, it doesn't make any sense. But that's might be true if you're just using it for gaming. But if you're going to render something in 3D or video edit or whatever it is, all of the extra RAM and the processing power there is like super important. And so that combination of those things came from the Asus hardware group. And they were the ones who suggested that. It's an incredible amount of power to pack into such a slim package. And the way the fans work, the way the hardware is laid out inside the machine, that's really the strength of Asus engineering. I've already gotten a few messages from friends who use MacBook Airs and whatever, and they're like, wow, I'm jealous of your vents. So it's and so that was the way that that particular hardware package was arrived at.
The colors and the font choices, all that stuff is also a big part of that reimagining, but also very different to a lot of the collabs that you've done before. And even between the Air Pack itself, which has the very maximalist graphics with the kind of Acronym Dynamics logo and stuff on, quite a big difference there aesthetically. So when I heard Acronym and gaming laptop first, I imagined something very different, like much more like the Prestos or the VaporMax, like the very kind of cyberpunk, maximalist, in-your-face kind of thing. Was that something that you thought about, that direction? And what made you kind of want to change and do something totally different?
Well, with Acronym, we're always looking at everything on a case-by-case basis. That's kind of the luxury we have, is that we're small enough and can invest the time into approaching things that way. There's no, let's say, template that we use, or we don't apply a template from one thing to the other thing. So I can understand why people would think that might happen, or that we, I think also when we did the first sneakers, everybody was expecting us to do like a black ballistic nylon shoe, right? Back then too, no one was expecting these crazy colors and patterns and everything. But we're always looking, what are we given as variables to work with, and what can we achieve with those, and what's the most interesting forward thing we can do with them. And so the parameters that we were given and the goals we had for the laptop were completely different from those of the sneakers. And ultimately, an investigation into the process, into the craft of making the item, always informs the decisions we make and how we end up. We also didn't decide to do that right away. It was over periods of iteration and back and forth with ASUS and their engineers that led ultimately to the finished piece as it is now. So.
Yeah, I guess a very different approach to the kind of take product X but make it acronym that you'd find from probably most other, certainly streetwear brands.
Yeah, I mean, I guess fundamentally we don't have a branding first approach, which maybe unfortunately, because that would save us a lot of time. probably make a lot more collabs and probably a lot more money in the end. but yeah, that's just not that interesting to us. So we're much more interested in really investigating and understanding what it is that we're working with and what are the spaces that can be pushed within that field.
Considering Acronym's expertise is very much in clothing, obviously, how did that translate to a laptop? Did you have some kind of unique challenges, or did it feel like it was fundamentally a very similar process?
It actually felt fundamentally very similar, because when we're designing our apparel, at least the stuff that we do for ourselves for Acronym, we primarily design that as an interface. So it is wearable and it is fashion and identity and even microclimate and physics and all that, but it's fundamentally a tool to interface the wearer, the user, to their environment, and much like a piece of electronics or a laptop or a telephone. So I think a lot of the design decisions there were very organic and quite natural for us. Also, obviously everyone uses these devices, phones and laptops in particular, on a daily basis. It's your primary method of primary tool for creation. So having spent countless hours with my own laptops, I have very specific ideas of things I'd like to do and things that I don't like. And David Rudnick and I spent an inordinate amount of time discussing what would be possible and what we should try to do, balanced out obviously with what's achievable with the timeline and the production resources that we had. And yeah, I think we're pretty happy with the result, actually.
Did any of those kind of design decisions cause any problems for ROG in terms of the technical construction of that stuff? You've got much heavier printing on the keycaps, for example.
Pretty much all of them. All of them caused problems. There wasn't a single thing that we did. They were like, oh yeah, no problem. Every single thing was multiple iterations and tests and trials, and things failed a lot of times. But they were really, they were really proactive, and they really did. I don't know how many, for example, I don't know how many different blacks I looked at for the A part. A part is the lid of the laptop that you see when it's closed. I looked at least 9 or 10 different material finish variations. They're different shades of black and different textures, and leave a different amount of fingerprints. And when they're laser etched, they have a different color. And really, the only way to do that is to actually make them and look at them. So there were regular regular FedEx deliveries from across the world. With, obscure looking hardware fragments inside that we hold it to the light and compare to each other and be like, does this one match the other part? And the keyboard itself was a whole saga. It's 8-color process in the end. And when they told us at the beginning, you can change the keyboard, I'm pretty sure they were just thought we were going to say, yeah, we'd like to make all the keys red, or whatever it is. But in the end, they also said no at some point. And they're like, no, we can't do this. You got 3 colors, you can use it. That's it. And dialogue back and forth, explanation, why is it important, et cetera, et cetera. And at the end, they're like, all right, no, we got it. Let's do it. So, and I think it paid off. It paid off, I think.
No, that's good. You don't want to make it too easy for them. But the RMT, it's not just about... Nobody wants to do the easy way. Really works with Acronym, I don't think. No, agreed. The RMT, not just about cosmetic differences, but you've got the functional side of things as well. You've got the dedicated button to launch the brain. You've got ExoNet as well. Can you tell us a bit about that relationship between the individual user and the collective with those software changes, and how you see that developing over time? Because it still feels like we're very early days with that side of things.
Yes. I mean, fundamentally, the brain is something we immediately said we would like to include with the machine. It's a program that my brother had developed very, very early on, like in the 90s already. And I've been using in various iterations for my entire professional life. So for it to be a true Acronym machine, we immediately said, like, we have to have the brain. And even the first Acronym product, Kit 1 that came out in 2002, came with a brain remix. So it's like it came with a CD-ROM that had the software in it, and that was the first time we'd done a special version of the brain. This is the second, and that's a fundamentally different way of interfacing with your data and with your files and even with your own creative process, because you can build associative visual maps of things, and much like mind mapping, except that this is actually truly nonlinear. So it's not a two-dimensional representation. You can't do the same thing with a whiteboard and a marker. So once you start to use it, you'll see that, like, it takes a little while to get into it, but you'll be like, I fundamentally now can think about things differently. And I'm always impressed or convinced again that it works when I'm, looking for something that I've written, 5, 7, 10 years ago. And almost always within, a couple of minutes, I can find it. And because of the associative process and the way you build out the network of your own thoughts and data, you can remember one thing that leads you to the next, to the next, to the next, and the data is mapped out in the same way, and there it is. So, yeah, and then with the rest of the stuff, I don't want to really spoil too much, but there's definitely some things to discover coming up, and further down the line, there will be quite a few reveals. There's some really exciting contributions from very interesting people coming up. I'm not sure what I'm allowed to say at this point, but yeah, watch this space. It's going to be, I think it'll be cool.
Cool.
We'll get a kick out of that.
Yeah, that kind of relates to my next question then. So before the official reveal, we had this big ARG campaign, lots of teasers, lots of puzzles, lots of things to get people excited, but in a very different way to the standard Acronym release. So how did you go about creating something that was that complex, and why did you go for such a kind of unusual or a subversive way of building that hype?
That is a good question. It was again, it came out of the process of building the machine itself, and not really sure how to explain that. It just seemed like the right thing to do, It was just like, let's make it as interesting as we can. The stuff that's coming up in the future ties into that stuff as well. Yeah, I'm not sure I want to really talk about that. I don't want to give anything away. I don't want to spoil it for anybody. So, what's our official policy with that? We just had the opportunity to do it. We thought it'd be cool, so we did it. That was it. It wasn't. Obviously, it wasn't seen by a lot of people. It's a very specific audience, and we wanted to have something that rewarded people who pay attention. And if you didn't pay attention, you don't even know what we're talking about at this point. Yeah. So the whole laptop is set up like that, as are many other Acronym products, especially in this day and age of online internet criticism, where everybody just goes off on whatever it is that they've never seen or held in person. The initial reaction is often like that. We specifically made an experience for the other type of people who are able to think for themselves, form their own opinions, that are patient, that are observant, that are willing and understand the benefit of looking beyond the obvious. And if you can do that, then if you're that type of a observer and that type of a person in general, those are the people we want to reach. And so we built an experience that we hope spoke to at least some of them. And we hope that the stuff we're going forwards will continue to build that relationship.
Yeah, I definitely got the sense of some of the people on the ROG Facebook and Instagram comments. Laptop, not really for them so much, but that's okay. It's not for everyone.
Yeah. It's always the same with, whenever you do something new, by its very nature, it's going to disrupt things. And well, I don't really like that word, but it's definitely going to ruffle some feathers. It was exactly the same thing when we launched the first Nike sneakers. People hated them. It was the most hated, Air Force One of all time, maybe for quite a while. And it really, there was a big rift in like either you hated it or you loved it, and you got it or you didn't. But it was funny to see, as time went on, it's one of the most copied shoes. Like, I don't know how many different versions of that particular shoe I've seen, at least 6, 7 from like, everyone from Dolce & Gabbana to like, no brand, mass market retail versions. But we're not interested in doing what other people do, and we're not interested in leaving the status quo where it is. So we expect to shake things up and for people to be upset about it. So it's par for the course. Yeah.
As one final thing then, in one of the ROG Instagram posts, they described the RMT01 as the first step of the collaboration. So what's coming up next? Can we look forward to a whole Acronym tech ecosystem? Or at the very least, can we get a keycap set for the laptop, like an equivalent? That would be good.
Yeah, I've seen that request pop up a lot of times. Yeah, let's see. It's early days. We'll see how this is all received. It's a big rollout, and it's a very unprecedented collaboration. We really are blessed to have the opportunity to sort of go as hard as we did, and I think we used that opportunity quite well. So, but now it's up to. Ultimately, it's always up to how it's received and what happens. But things are looking good, and we definitely have a lot of ideas. This is just the smallest fraction of those ideas. I hate saying things before they're actually real. So. But yeah, again, watch the space and let's see what happens.
Yeah, cool. Well, hopefully we get to see a couple more of those ideas pop up in the future. That'll be super exciting.
Yes. Yeah. I hope so too.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that takes us 2 minutes over time. So apologies for the running over a little bit. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us and having us on the channel. Well, us having you rather on the channel. It's much appreciated.
Yeah.
And yeah, looking forward to what's coming out in kind of future drops and stuff like that. So we'll keep an eye out.
Very cool. Awesome. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, thank you. Cheers.
I liked your Death Stranding video as well.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
That was a good one.
Nice. Yeah, that was my first Acronym jacket. So.
Oh, really? Nice. That's a good one to start with.
Yeah. So I really wanted to do something different and go all out, because it kind of feels like since I started in like 2016, I was always like building up to like one day he's going to get an Acronym jacket. Because like I remember seeing like the J28K back in 2016 and be like, I can't afford that, but one day I'm going to get something. So yeah, that was it. So I kind of feel like, I had to do something a little bit above what I normally do.
Amazing. Yeah, that was really nice. Yeah, it's that collaboration was surprised all of us, I think. Also for Kojima Productions, it was the first time they'd done any kind of apparel in that category, and the resonance we got was also unbelievable, and the speed at which those things sold out and the amount of requests that we still get, it's really overwhelming.
Yeah.
That was a great one. That was a fun one.
Really cool collab for sure. I was a big fan.
Yeah.